So this is a video I've been meaning to do for quite some time. I just haven't really gotten around to it, and I really wanted to kind of have a good idea of what I was going to say before I went out and made it. Because there's a lot of ground to cover, so this is probably going to be super long. But if people are aware of other stuff I've made, that's probably not unexpected, and this is a huge topic. So yeah, I had to do a lot of research. I tried recording this actually, but Bandicam sometimes doesn't cooperate when I try to record things, but I'm rambling now. So, why Game of Thrones basically imploded from season... what season would it be? It would be season 4 onward. Because season 5 is really kind of where the show started to fall apart. Generally speaking, I would say season 1 through 4 are good. Especially season 1. Season 1 was exceptional. Season 2 was good. Season 3 was good. Season 4 was good. And then post season 4, we get what is generally considered by not just me, but everybody to be the worst season of the show, which is season 5. And we're going to talk a lot about season 5. Season 6 I actually missed. I hadn't even realized that it was on air when it was broadcast. And there's probably a good reason for that. I didn't see season 6. I saw like a couple parts of it, and I hadn't even noticed. So season 6 was kind of a snooze fest. It was very forgettable. Then season 7, which just finished airing, I liked. It was a mess, and it didn't really make a lot of sense, but it was entertaining. And I think that's something to say. Even the bad seasons of Game of Thrones, with the exception of 5, which is painful to watch, are still fun. Like, season 7's still fun to watch. The actors in the show have always and will continue to do an excellent job. I'm always just astounded by how good a job the actors do when they're having to work under very difficult conditions. Having to work under conditions where you don't really know what's happening, where people will not explain things to you, where the director kind of seems like some kind of a moron. It's hard. It's like if you've seen the Plinkett videos when they're interviewing Ewan McGregor, and Ewan McGregor is saying how it's difficult for him to act under the circumstances in the show, in the movie, because everything's CG and there's nothing really for him to react to. So, like, the guys have to basically, how would you describe it? Try to react to things as they're explained to, and you can't work under those conditions. So the actors, I think, continue to do a good job. I don't want anyone to think this is a criticism of them. Game of Thrones remains one of the best acted shows. Most of the casting decisions, even of people whose plots kind of became clusterfucks because of bad writing, continue to do a really good job. But yeah, let's get right into this. So what was the main problems with the show? Like, what was kind of the root causes? And then I'll go into some of the specific examples. Now, there's a guy on YouTube called The Dragon Demands who did probably 10 hours of this. And I'm not joking. Like, he did like a video for each plot line, like why each plot line failed, and I'm not doing that. Sorry. I'm not going to do a separate video for each one. Although I might do a video sometime on just the Coup and Dorne, because the Coup and Dorne is one of the worst plot story decisions I've ever seen in any work of fiction. But basically, he goes into a bunch of interviews, and he finds that Benioff and Weiss basically are not very smart. The first couple seasons worked out really well because they were really straitjacketed. Now, that's something important to keep in mind, is that a lot of really intelligent, talented directors, be they of video games, etc., need a straitjacket. They need someone to restrain them. Michael Bay is a really good example of that. Michael Bay is a very talented director. He's good with special effects. He's good with action scenes. He needs somebody to keep a short leash on him, to be like, no, Michael, you can't do this. No, you have to stop. To basically prevent him from doing stuff like the robot humping Megan Fox's leg and the Dindu robots and stuff. Like, he needs somebody to stop him from doing that. Zack Snyder is also a very talented director, but once again, he needs somebody to put him on a leash. Kojima is another example. Miyazaki, the Dark Souls Miyazaki. Like, these people are skilled, but they, as I said, they need somebody to just tell them no, and to be like, no, this is a really bad idea. And it's clear Benioff and Weiss don't have anybody to do that for them. So for the first couple seasons, they were restrained by the books because they could only change it so much. But once we start getting into like season 5 on, we don't have the books to go on anymore. So it's mostly just stuff they put in. So there's that. They also have a bad tendency to play favorites. And there's been a couple of different actors who have come forward about this. The most noticeable one is Indira Varma, who plays Illyria Martell, says that Illyria Martell says, or people said about her, they really liked her in Rome. They kind of had a hard-on for her. So they put in the entire Dorne subplot largely just because they wanted to give her a bigger role. And they had like a fetish of seeing her in like this Mediterranean medieval castle. And that's like the whole reason the Dorne subplot was added in. So it wasn't added in like because they thought it would make the show better. It wasn't added in because they thought it would be cool. It was added in solely so they could play favorites with an actress they like. And that's kind of what you see with a lot of the decisions. If a scene doesn't really seem to make sense, the actual reason for that is largely just because they like that actor and they wanted to see a specific thing. Like changing Jane Westerling to Talisa was there because they like Richard Madden and they wanted to give him a romance plot. They wanted to see him act the romance plot, so Talisa was inserted for that. It wasn't to show another aspect of the character. It wasn't to like show how young Robb is, how naive he is. It was put in there because they wanted to see something with the actor. Now, probably the only case where I think this worked out really well is with Tywin Lannister and Charles Dance's portrayal of him. I think it's pretty obvious if you think about it that a lot of the Tywin Lannister scenes were put in because Charles Dance did such a good job portraying Tywin Lannister. And if it had have been like a less talented actor, his role probably wouldn't have been expanded. Now this is okay because Tywin needed his role expanded. Because in the books, he's just kind of a generic villain character. You don't really get any idea about him. But even from the first scene where you just see him skinning the deer and he talks about family and he talks about his legacy, that gave him a lot of depth compared to the books. He stops becoming just kind of a ruthless power monger and he becomes kind of this somewhat more complicated patriarch family whose goals are fundamentally in a lot of ways unselfish because his primary concern is not for himself but for his family legacy. So that was an example of where it worked, but even within him, the scenes of him and Arya at Harrenhal were awful. And they derailed both his and Arya's plot. Because it made him overly sympathetic. And in the books, the scenes at Harrenhal were some of the scariest stuff in fiction, but they got rid of it and Flanderized it, I think is the term from whatever it's called again. TV tropes. So yeah, so you have that aspect to it. So sometimes it was good, mainly it was bad. The Stannis death scene was another example of that. The Stannis' death was put in solely because they wanted to see Stephen Delane act a death scene without dialogue. That's why there's no dialogue in that scene, because Benioff and Weiss like nonverbal scenes. So they're like, apparently if you listen to the commentary track, they're like, look at his face, look at how good his facial expressions are during the scene. Look at his face. And it's that's all it is. So, and part of the reason why people started to kind of question a lot of this was Stephen Delane said in an interview, I have no idea why my character did any of this. I just did my best job to act it. And Jon Snow said similar stuff, but he made up excuses. From what I've heard, the actor who plays Barristan Selmy is like, what the fuck's going on? And he like questioned them, and because they questioned him, they wrote him a lame death scene. And that happened with a couple other people. The actor who played Jaqen, you know when he says to Arya, now you're no one. Like he said, I have no idea what that means. I just tried to say the line as best I could. And The Dragon Demands was like, how can they work under these conditions? How can you act when you have no idea what your character's motivations are? Like an example of the difficulties of this is the actor who played Oberyn Martell had no idea what was going to happen. Like they just made Dorne up as it was going, and he played Doran Martell like in the books. So in the books, Doran Martell has this master plan to cure the common cold, like this 20-year-long plan to get revenge on the Lannisters. And he played him as if Doran Martell was the mastermind. but the plot and the way it turns out seems to have suggest that Duran Martel was actually just weak and he didn't have a master plan the whole time. So the lack of communication with the actor and forcing the actors to work under a situation where they had no idea what their character motivations are has made the show worse, and it has made it very ambiguous, because acting is to a large extent a technical skill. Being able to get inside the character's head, being able to, I guess you could say, act a certain way to give people a kind of heads up as to what's going to happen. Like, you can see hints later on often in the actions people make. But for whatever reason, they decided, no, we're not going to tell them. We're just going to make this shit up as it goes along. And it just got worse and worse as time went on. But that's kind of the reasons for what happened. So what happened exactly, and why do I think it went so wrong? I think you can best describe it. It's kind of hard to explain, but it was a complete breakdown of cause and effect, if that makes sense. Like, people's actions cease to have any relation to their motivations, personality, or characters. The events in the show cease to have any sort of geopolitical realism or logic. And it just, as time went on, I just kept going, like, what the hell's going on? Why are these things happening? I'm confused. And if you're in a situation where people just have no idea, like, what's even happening, that's a really bad position to be in. So let's just go over some of what I would consider to be kind of examples of illogical behavior. Now, the Dragon, this is once again taking from what the Dragon Demand said, but he points out in the books, the Night's Watch, the reason why they killed Jon Snow. Now, in the books, the reason they killed Jon Snow is because after the Bastard Letter, he's going to head south and take on Ramsay. And the Night's Watch, I think, correctly believes that if Jon Snow loses to Ramsay Bolton's going to come up with the Dreadfort men and take on the Night's Watch, and they're going to get wiped out, basically because of Jon Snow's personal vendetta. So that makes sense. In the show, they kill Jon Snow because he let the wildlings through, but they kill him after he let the wildlings through. So it's like, what is even the reason? So there's no logic to it. There's no internal plot logic to why he did that. Stannis burned Shireen. Why he even took Shireen and Selyse with him is not particularly coherent. I don't know why he would take them with him. In the books, Stannis specifically left his daughter at the wall and made his remaining bannermen swear, if I die in the assault on Winterfell, when the big mercenary army I hired comes, you are going to continue the civil war and put Shireen on the Iron Throne. My daughter will be on the Iron Throne. It's hers by right. And I think something like they kind of forgot about was Stannis, and this was kind of one of the sympathetic things about him, is Stannis loves his daughter very dearly. It can kind of be hard to tell because he's just very emotionless, and he doesn't know how to show his affection. But Stannis very dearly loves his daughter, and I can't see him burning her. Now, in the Benny Offenweiss said, oh, this happens in the next book. The only state I can see it happening is all hope is lost. The White Walkers are coming through the wall, and he has to do what Azor Ahai did and quench Lightbringer in her blood, because she's the only person. Her and Davos are probably the only people Stannis actually loves. Or actually kind of legitimately has human affection for. But the way they did in the show, oh no, there's something bad happened. We're going to burn Shireen because of reasons. And then Melisandre leaves and his wife commits suicide. And it's like, none of that is kind of stuff that Stannis would do. And Stannis is like this, supposed to be the best, or one of the best battle commanders in Westeros. Granted, he lost the Battle of the Blackwater, but the Battle of the Blackwater was a bad situation. And he kind of, strategic logic dictated that he had to attack King's Landing before it got reinforced, given his limited numbers, if he had any hope of winning the war. So, I mean, you can think of that what you will, but Ramsay Bolton shows up with like a few good men, and somehow with like a couple good men, he's able to just completely curb stomp Stannis' entire army, and then Stannis just stupidly dies, and none of it really makes any sense, and it's stupid and illogical. But that's, I don't know, that's just kind of what they were going for, I guess. Like I said, the whole thing is really weird, and as I've said, I think it shows just the breakdown of basic logic as things go on. Now let's talk a bit about. We've talked a bit about Stannis. Let's talk a bit about Dorne, because I think Dorne is really the best example of where things just went horribly wrong. So in the Dorne plot line is, I'm trying to think of how you can describe it. So let's just go through it, and I'll go through all the little things about it that make it illogical. So as in the books, they send Myrcella to marry Tristan, the youngest son of Oberyn Martell. Now, they took out Oberyn Martell's other two children, but that's fine, because they... Sorry, not Oberyn, Doran Martell's other two children, but that's fine, because they needed to simplify the show somewhere. That doesn't bother me. That makes logical sense. So, okay, so they did that with Doran Martell. So she is going to marry Tristan. So despite her going to marry Tristan, so because she's going to be doing that, while that's happening, I wasn't sure whether or not they were actually going to put more of it in. Maybe like a couple scenes of her just flirting with Tristan, like the scenes they had in the show, those were fine. I don't think it was necessary to have a whole Dorne subplot. The Dorne subplot sucked in the books, and it sucked equally in the show. But, yeah, so it's hard to even know where to start. Okay, so let's just follow it along as the plot goes. So Oberyn Martell stupidly died fighting the Mountain. Illyria Sand was there, and she wanted to get revenge on Doran, on Rhaegor and the Lannisters. Okay, that makes sense. That's logical character motivation. So Doran at the moment isn't willing to go to war with the Lannisters single-handedly because Dorne would get curb stomped. Dorne has the least military power of all of the Seven Kingdoms. It's in the middle of nowhere. If Doran was going to enter the war, he would have to attack the Reach, which has probably like 4 times as many soldiers as he does. So he would get completely curb stomped. But Illyria Sand is like, no, we have to go to war. Apparently in the books, she's the one who doesn't want to go to war with the rest of the realm, but in this, she does want to go to war with the... I don't know, it doesn't make any sense. So I'm just trying to think of how to even get through this. So she wants to go to war, and she's like, you gotta go to war with the Lannisters. And Doran Martell's like, no, that doesn't make any sense. Don't worry, I have this master plan. She's like, I don't care about your master plan. We have to go to war with them now, even if it results in the complete destruction of Dorne. And Doran's like, no, fuck no, that doesn't make any sense. We've got, and then she's like, we have to kill Myrcella. And Doran's like, why are we going to kill Myrcella? She wasn't involved with this. She's just some innocent girl. And they're like, no, we have to kill her because of reasons. And you're just like, well, why? Okay, so they hate the Lannisters. And I guess we're going to take the perspective that everyone in this show are like evil douchebags. But really, killing like in the books like a 11-year-old girl, and in this like a 16-year-old girl, they're just gonna kill her, and they're all such sociopaths that doesn't bother any of them. That they're so blinded by revenge. I don't know. It seems illogical that no one would have any moral quandaries with this. I mean, I know this show's dark and shit, but not everybody in the universe is a complete sociopath. And I think you have to be a complete sociopath to want to just kill some random innocent girl. It's just... I don't know. So that is their master plan, to kill Myrcella. And because Doran doesn't want to kill Myrcella because they're engaged to his heir, the Sand Snakes are like, we're going to perform a coup. We're going to kill Myrcella. We're going to kill Doran. And we're going to take charge of Dorne. And I'm like, well, how the fuck are they going to take charge of Dorne? None of them have a claim to the the throne of Dorne. None of them are princes of Dorne. They're like, the people will follow the Sand Snakes. Why? The Sand Snakes are bastards. Now they're like, well, Argent, bastardy doesn't matter in Dorne. Yeah, but they can't inherit, I don't think, at the same level. Plus, they aren't sons of Doran. They're children of Oberyn. And on that subject, Oberyn and Doran were extremely close. They loved each other very much. They worked together. They were co-conspirators in their, like, 30-year-long plan to cure the common cold. They were like, they were bros and they had a bromance. So the Sand Snakes are so fucking psychotic that to avenge the death of Oberyn Martell, they're going to kill, like, people who weren't related to it, perform a coup d'etat, and remove a family that's governed Dorne for, I think, like, I forget how old the Martells are. I know they've only governed all of Dorne since Nymeria came, but they've been kings of Sunspear and stuff for longer. So they're going to end the Martell dynasty that Oberyn was part of, kill probably Oberyn Martell, the person he was closest to, other than maybe Ilaria, and like all this other stuff to get revenge for Oberyn Martell. Like, it doesn't make any sense. I'm having trouble even explaining this, because it doesn't make any sense. So we have all of that nonsense, and ultimately Jaime and Bronn somehow show up, and then we have a bunch of just shitty scenes between the Sand Snakes and Jaime and Bronn, and then the Sand Snakes get out of jail for some reason. I don't remember how they get out of jail, but they do their coup, and they kill Doran Martell, and they kill the chief of his guard, Ario Hota, or whatever his name is. They made black because we was Kangs. And all the other Martell guards just stand there and don't do anything because they're so disgusted by Doran's cowardice. Because that's how stuff works. Guards selected for their loyalty and skill will just turn on their liege lord if they disagree with a decision he makes in favor of some random psychopaths. So, yeah, so they killed Doran Martell for basically no reason. And not only that, but then they go and they kill Myrcella for basically no reason. And even more crazy, they killed Quentyn Martell. Why? What did Quentyn do? Quentyn literally didn't do nothing. He wasn't involved in anything. They're like, oh, he's weak. He didn't get revenge against the Lannisters. Well, how the fuck was he supposed to get revenge against the Lannisters? He wasn't the Prince of Dorne. He was in no position to declare war. It's basically like taking some random guy off the street and going, oh, you didn't declare war against the Lannisters. I'm going to kill you over that. And that's basically how little sense them killing Tristan is. And not only that, but they make like jokes about it, like, oh, you're a greedy bitch because you wouldn't let me kill him. Like, what the fuck is that? Also, in all parts of the Seven Kingdoms, kinslaying is viewed as like one of the worst sins of all time. It's something you just can't wash off, pretty much. People are absolutely disgusted by kinslaying, and even like the worst people in the series will try to cover it up, or will try to get someone else to do it for them because it's so disgusting. And the other most grievous sin in the Seven Kingdoms is breaking guest right. And killing Myrcella is breaking guest right. And people be like, well, she was leaving. I know, but that's a technicality. The point is, she was in Dorne under the protection of the Dornish, and they killed her. And that's breaking guest right. And guest right is probably one of the most sacred things in the Seven Kingdoms. The Freys are universally reviled by pretty much everyone for breaking guest right. But we're supposed to accept that for whatever reason, people don't mind that the Sand Snakes killed their prince, who was loved by the Dornish people. So people are okay with the fact that he killed the Prince of Dorne, that they killed his son, that they killed an innocent girl, that they seized power with no real reason or legitimacy to seize power, and they broke guest right. So they're in charge of Dorne now. None of this makes any sense. And even after they do it, they don't get revenge against the Lannisters. So this whole plot line was just added in. And this was apparently shot like last minute. The writers weren't coordinated. There's like all this random teleportation. There's continuity errors. Nothing about it makes any sense. What's some other shit that doesn't make any sense? Okay, what is Littlefinger's master plan? What is it that he wants more than anything else? He wants to marry Sansa and sit on the Iron Throne with her as his waifu. This is confirmed. This is what Littlefinger has wanted the whole time. So how he achieves this is he sells Sansa to Ramsay Bolton for no adequately explored reason and lets him rape her and take her virginity. Why? Doesn't Littlefinger want that for himself? Doesn't Littlefinger want to marry Sansa? Isn't she his waifu? Nothing about his plan makes any sense. Like, he basically despoils the one thing he wanted. Is his idea to make Sansa so emotionally, like, disturbed that she'll just jump into his arms? It goes directly against what we know about Littlefinger as a character and what his motivations are. Why Sansa does it also makes no sense. I think the explanation was it was destroying the Boltons from within. Like, what the fuck does that even mean? I don't know. It's never explained. It's never explored. Nothing about Littlefinger's motivations makes any sense post-season. His death didn't make a lot of sense either. But that's, like, I think, a good example of it. What are some other examples? The Sand Stakes are an example. Stannis burning his daughter for no adequately explored reason is a good example. Making Ramsay into a villain Sue, where he's going to go fight Jon Snow's army. Although, to be fair, I think people forget, in the books, Ramsay is really dumb. He's so dumb that Roose Bolton says, "Don't make me rue the day I raped your mother, bastard." Which is an awesome line. But, yeah, so Ramsay Bolton, with like 20 good men, does this commando raid and defeats Stannis. And Stannis, for whatever reason, didn't post guards, I guess. Despite Stannis having the informed ability of being a good battle commander, he somehow loses. I don't know, like, just none of it makes any sense. And just the further you go, the more just the errors in logic. Like, what are some other things that don't make any sense? How the fuck did Alanna Tyrell become the Lord Paramount of the Reach? She has no claim to be Lord Paramount of the Reach. She is a red wine by blood. She's not a Tyrell by blood. She's a Tyrell by marriage. As of the death of Loras Tyrell, and it's retarded that they didn't put Willis in, but whatever. As with the death of Loras Tyrell, the Tyrell paternal line is extinct. There is no longer anyone, because apparently the people in this universe don't have cousins or uncles or aunts or anything who would just take over. So the Tyrell bloodline is extinct. So what would happen normally is they would the lords, either the king or the lords of the Reach, would elect the new Lord Paramount for themselves. So in this case, basically what happened with Randall Tarley is Randall Tarley probably was the greatest lord, because the High Towers don't exist in this universe, was probably one of the most prestigious lords remaining. Skilled commander, commands a lot of respect, a strong man who could probably maintain control of a very fractious land. So Cersei, who I guess is the closest thing the Seven Kingdoms has to a central government at this point in time, even though that also doesn't make any sense, declares him to be Lord Paramount of the Reach. Okay, well that doesn't make sense, but he's a decent candidate to be Lord Paramount of the Reach. I can't really argue that he's not fit for the position. But yeah, how the fuck does Alanna Tyrell become Lord? It doesn't make any sense. There's no geopolitical reason for it. There's no reason the Lords of the Reach would follow her. And at the moment, there's so many of the various dynasties of Westeros have gone extinct. I think the Seven Kingdoms would realistically just fall apart at this point in time. There's no real reason for them to stay together now that most of the great houses are extinct. Like, let's take a minute and look at what great houses are extinct. The Martells are extinct. The paternal line Starks are extinct. The I guess if Bran can still have children, then the line's not extinct. The Starks are de facto extinct. The Baratheons are extinct. The Tyrells are extinct. The Martells are extinct. The Greyjoys are... Actually, the Greyjoys are not extinct. They're one of the few houses left. The Lannisters will soon be extinct, even though the Lannisters are a huge, huge family. And you would have to kill literally like hundreds or thousands of people to get rid of the Lannisters. But in this universe, the Lannisters don't have that many family members. So most of the great houses are basically dead in the water at this point. So I think what would realistically happen in geopolitical terms is the Seven Kingdoms would more or less cease to exist. Oh, the Tullys are also de facto extinct. Enemir, and maybe the Freys are too. I don't know how, if Arya killed all of the Freys, but if she killed all the Frey males, then that line is also extinct. So, very few of the remaining... Oh, and the Vale will be... the House of Arryn will be de facto extinct once Robin inevitably dies with no heir, because he has, like, severe developmental issues. So, yeah, so we have all of these families extinct. A lot of the High Lords have also died, so there's really no one left to bring any sort of order or control to what remains of Westeros. So, as I said, realistically, I think at this point in time, the Seven Kingdoms would collapse into squabbling High Lordships. Some of the more united of the Seven Kingdoms would do what the North did and just elect somebody to be their new monarch, to be their new Lord Paramount. But by and large, the Seven Kingdoms have just ceased to exist as a meaningful political division. So I don't, but that's not really like established, I think, or really explored. It's just strange. Like the geopolitics don't make any sense. Cersei declaring herself queen made no sense. I don't know who would follow Cersei. She has absolutely no claim to the Iron Throne. She's not a Baratheon. She's not a Targaryen. She's a woman, and she doesn't have any legal heirs. She's literally like the worst possible person who could take the Iron Throne. The only reason some people accept her is because Daenerys is a more immediate threat. And Cersei can basically be physically removed whenever Dany has been dealt with, which is, I think, probably what Randall Tarley and some of the other people were thinking is, look, this woman's a complete psycho, but nobody supports her, no one likes her, and as soon as Daenerys has been dealt with, we will deal with her. But no, Cersei has no claim to the Iron Throne. All she has is what remains of the Lannister bannermen. And there isn't many Lannister soldiers left. Most of the Lannister soldiers were wiped out in the various wars. The Westerlands took one of the heaviest casualty ratios because they were directly involved in the entire war. But despite that, somehow the Lannisters were able to seize the Iron Throne in basically a coup, despite having no legal right to do it. It doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. What else doesn't make any sense? There's just a lot of shit to go over here. Jon Snow bowing to Dany was kind of lame. That didn't make a lot of sense. Like, Jon, you're going to be made King of the North so we can maintain our independence. Oh, look, there's some hot girl I want to screw. Okay, the North is no longer independent. We're going to bow to Daenerys and her dragons because of reasons. The White Walkers finally showed up after like 10 seasons of doing nothing. That was kind of weird. But as I said, just the errors in logic. There was all the teleporting armies, like the Unsullied, the Lannisters, etc., just teleported to the other side of the continent. The Ironborn fleets teleported multiple times. I know people are saying, well, Argent, what about suspension of disbelief? And that's fair enough, but it's gotten to the point in the show where I can't anymore. Like, it just makes no goddamn sense how they're able to get across a continent the size of South America without modern transportation in a matter of seemingly days, if not, I guess maybe weeks, if we're going to be generous. But it's just, it's bizarre. And yeah, so I think that covers like most of the major points. So basically the whole thing is just kind of plot convenience equals movies suck. The show, in my view, is gradually just turning into a bigger and bigger disaster, and will continue to be one as it goes on. At least season 7 was entertaining, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what kind of new random shit the next season will bring. But at the same time, I think you have to take whatever happens with a huge grain of salt. You have to realize that the show is now written in charge of by hacks who have no idea what the fuck they're doing. And just keep that in mind whenever you're watching it. So those are kind of my thoughts as to why this show started to suck, some things that started to suck about it, etc. This is Argent, and I'll talk to you guys later.